Hi, it's Dave here. Another design review. I wanted to take you through a project we did for a startup called Systematic Ventures. They're building a portal for information around the venture capital industry that's centered around an AI engine that has predictions for how well an investment would do in a particular venture, in an industry, across investor portfolios. It's quite a wide-ranging ability to predict outcomes. And the challenge really was taking what was an immense amount of information about extraordinary number of companies and all of the data about those companies and all of the cross sections between those companies, other companies they compete with, that they work with, investors that are behind them. There's so many different multifaceted ways to look at it, and making that something that's easy to approach, easy to quickly get access to, and how to incorporate all of these sort of AI predictions and make them useful. So let's take a look. So the first step with this project, like any, was to think through the personas. And we don't approach personas from the same sort of a normal perspective, if you will. We don't say that Jane is a marketing manager and she rides her bike to work and all of these other things. We think about exactly what the person does during the day, what their overall job to be done is, extended beyond the application itself, and thinking about how to bring them all in. And we really focused on this project on a persona that was about very quick, easy access to information. This was not a person that was going to be in there exploring. So they needed very quick, easy access to get exactly what they wanted and to be able to create large sets of data that they could then extract back out into other applications. This was the core focus for where the company really wanted to go. And so let's take a look at how we approached it. The first is really the homepage. Was a timeline-based system that would surface new information about companies that an individual was following, or industries that they were following, or investors that they were following. If you think about somebody's in the venture industry, they could have a portfolio of their own companies. They could create a portfolio of companies that were competitors. They could follow particular investors that they like to work with. They could be focused in on individual industries. So this allowed things to be sorted by what was in their chosen list, but also create a recommended list that we could build within a recommendation engine off of user data over time. You can see that we focus in on really sort of sparse amounts of color to try and just focus people in on the key parts, those color boxes that are over there. I can't quite get my finger all the way over there. Those with the big numbers, those are the AI predictions that we simplified down to make it something that's easy to stand out, that you could easily compare and start to rank companies based on these different things. Each individual company in the data set has their own page with multiple tabs inside it that would show quite a lot of information about the company, about the funding that it's had, comparisons against others, interesting data that was sort of surfaced around web and social that people wanted to see. Again, one of the challenges with a lot of this was sort of thinking about how much visualization to bring in, because some of these things are easier to actually capture in a dynamic way because the data set's known, so the X and the Y are easier to contain. Others become really immense. If you're looking at 5 companies and comparing, it's one thing. If you're trying to look across the entire, say, mobile industry, and there's thousands and thousands of companies, having the visualizations can break pretty quickly and easily. So we focused down on the things that were actually easy for people to actually work with and that could be reliably visualized. Investors are another key category in this kind of a industry. So individual investor firms as well as individual investor people all have representations in the data set. So building out ways for those to show off, to understand who they are, what they focus on, what companies they've been involved in, what the prediction from the AI was in terms of the success for any of those would be, thinking about how co-investors overlap and intersect. It was all quite of an interesting mechanism and challenging to get all that information in. Searching was definitely a big use case. People want to jump in and look at an individual company or an investor or an industry. And so focusing on a real like easy top bar autocomplete kind of system, which also we added a little quick filter that you can kind of see right there on the right of that drop down. And that allowed the ability to jump in and just from the top sort by certain things. So if you're looking for a particular company, you could drop down one of the quick filters and pick a particular industry to make sure that it's narrowing yourself down. There are lots of startups in the world. A lot of them have very similar names, so having people be able to sort through that was pretty important. We also had a much more in-depth search, which we called the Explore tab, and that allowed much more filtering. Narrowing down by valuation or by date of last funding or a group of investors or looking at things across different industries, finding things that are like others. All of that comes together in this, and it allows people to build together a list of things, which could be sort of a watch list, or it could be the targeted sort of a competitor list for an investment. And those things all came together to be able to save them as lists. And boy, that's really helpful because frequently you're looking at things in buckets when you're thinking as a venture investor. And so putting those all together and being able to access them really quickly through just a quick click was really helpful. Finally, we did have a mobile interface for this, which is tough to do. Get so much information. How are you going to do that? And we opted for a simplified mobile experience, which is distinctly different. There was no confusion that the desktop and the mobile were going to be confused. And that was really based on the fact that somebody's walking around. Maybe they're walking in to see a company. Maybe they're just wandering around their office about to have a conversation. They're on the phone. They need to get quick access to a certain amount of information. They're not going to do all this sort of complex searching and creating portfolios and all those other kind of things on a mobile, because the screen just flat out isn't big enough to actually do that. They're not going to be able to see all of the extensive information that's available because the screen just isn't big enough. So we really focused in on what are the critical things that you might want to do when you're not sitting at a machine, a desktop machine, when you are just on the go, and that's what you're seeing here. Thanks again for joining us. Feel free to learn more about Sonder Studio at getsonder.com. Reach out to us at hello@getsonder.com with any questions or projects that you'd like to talk about. Thanks a lot.